Welcome. My name is Christian Osman and I'll be conducting this webcast today on assembly management and the use of planning and forecasting. The demo script is based on NAV 2013. Okay, so just moving to the next slide that covers the agenda. So the demo script consists of three parts. The first part will cover the use of order planning for an assembly to stock item. The second part will cover the use of planning worksheet for an assembly to stock item. And the final third part will cover the use of requisition worksheet to plan components used in an assembly to order environment. Okay, so now just moving to NAV 2013. Now before we start the video, I have set up a couple of items with planning parameters. Additionally, I increased the forecast for one of the components, and then also created a sales order for an assembly to stock item. You'll find additional details that go alongside this video in the documentation. Okay, so first I'm just going to highlight the items that I set up earlier so you can see how it's set up. So I'm just going to filter here. Okay, so here you've got the 1924W is the item is assembly to stock. Then you have the item starting with a 7. Those are the components. So this is an assembly to stock item. Which is using lot for lot, and the other components are using mainly fixed reorder quantity with a reorder point and a reorder quantity. So this will demonstrate that planning parameters will be considered when running planning features on assembly orders. Okay, so I'm just gonna go out of here, go back to the assembly menu. The other thing that I set up earlier is a sales order. So I've got here the sales order for my assembly to stock item against location red. So in all examples we'll be using location red. It's got a quantity of 10, and as you can see here availability is -8, so we have 2 in stock against location red, so we are minus 8. So when we run planning, we will expect to replenish a minimum of 8. Okay, now I'm just going to close this and go back here, and then we start with order planning. Okay, so that will be the first part. Now, if I'm just going to rerun calculate plan for all demand. So, okay, so just going to rerun and recreate the planning, and just gonna scroll down to find my sales order, which is here. So here you can find that there's a sales order demand as I just demonstrated, and that item we're missing 8. So there's a needed quantity of 8, and the replenishment system is assembly. So when we execute this order here, it's gonna plan to it's gonna create an assembly order. So at the moment we haven't got the assembly order, so there's also no assembly demand yet. So just going back to the sales demand here, reopen the order here, select it, and we make the assembly order. So here active order, create assembly orders. We've got this additional field here, and we're just doing OK. Okay, so now we have the assembly order. Now if we run assembly demand and do a new calculate plan against it, it will now pick up the assembly order, and it will now start planning its components which are purchased. So the other thing to note is no planning parameters are taken into account at the moment, and no forecast because we're running order planning, so it just does it order by order. Okay, so I'm just gonna execute these orders, make orders. Okay, so that is gonna create purchase orders. So this concluded the first part of demonstrating the use of order planning in relation to assembly management. So I'm just gonna close this. And the next phase is that we are gonna demonstrate the use of planning worksheet. So the first thing that we're going to do is, before we continue, we need to cancel the assembly order. So if I'm just going to delete that assembly order here, delete, yeah. Okay, now go back to assembly and open planning worksheet. Okay, so we now run a calculate generative plan. We set some filters. So the full year of 2014. We are going to use the forecast. I've already set the filter here and location red, so just doing OK. So now we get all the planning suggestions, which plan not only direct demand but also indirect demand, including incorporating assembly as orders. So here at the top you find the assembly order for the assembly to stock item, and as you can see here we've got the 8 and then 2 times 100, which is the so if I'm just gonna look up one of the components, take this 70,000, so we do our planning, and here you can find the planning, so it's taking into account the order parameters or the planning parameters. So for example, take another one here, and here you can see the untracked quantity, which is the reorder point, the reorder quantity. So it's taking that into account when planning, also for assembly. Okay, so I'm just gonna close this and delete these lines. Okay, so now the next phase is that we're gonna plan for components. It's components against the assembly order for an assembly to order environment. So the first thing that we do is we're gonna change on one of the items that we're going to use next. There's this one here, and then on the replenishment we're going to change that to from assembly to stock. We're going to use assembly to order. Okay, so next we're going to create a sales order. So we click new. I'm going to use customer 10,000. I'm going to use item as type, and then we're going to use that item that we set as assembly to order. I'm going to use location red, and we have 10 pieces. Okay, so now we get the availability assembly availability warning message. So how many you're able to assemble. Existing inventory is -1. So, and including the expected availability of its components. So just going to click yes now, which is going to synchronize and create the assembly order. Just click there, yes. Okay, so next I'm going to create some forecast for one of the components. So I'm just going to go back here and open the planning here and then find the production forecast. The other thing is you can always search for the pages here, so which then gets directly. Okay, so here I'm going to use status forecast. Location is of course red, and we're going to view by month, and I'm going to forecast type being component. Next we're going to find the item that I'm going to set a certain forecast against. So the item that we're going to use is 70,002. Okay, just close there. So here we've got, so I'm just going to add 100 for February and 100 for March. Okay, and we close, just click OK and we close the forecast. So back to the assembly menu. And next we're going to demonstrate the use of requisition worksheet. So if I'm just going to do requisition. Okay, so here we are directly in the requisition. So you can also use the search feature. So now run calculate plan again. Run it for these items against location red. So now we get the needed purchasing of the components to build the assembly to order item, and it's also included a forecast. So if I'm looking at the item that I do an order tracking, there's no order tracking entries, but there's an untracked quantity, and if we click on that, you can see here the forecast. So also forecasting is included on the assembly to order lines. Um, so it's all integrated with assembly management.